To understand the fear of public speaking, we need to first understand its root cause. And the short answer to this is that, like most relationships, this is complicated. But after years of personal experiences, speaking to so many different public speaking professionals and doctors who are studying anxiety and where fears really come from, this is what we found. Now, there definitely are a bunch of reasons. What I'm about to say is not the only one. But essentially, when we go on stage, our bodies tend to enter a state known as fight or flight. You might have heard of this. It usually happens when we realize we're under some sort of threat. In the case of public speaking, the threat is of judgment. That's the main thing that we're afraid of. Not really speaking on stage, but what people will think of us. And this is a very real fear, because if we screw up on stage, or if we forget our lines, or if we are just not good, we feel that the audience not only rejects our message, but they reject us as people. And when we think that so many people reject us, that can really hurt, even if it's not true. And this fear is unfortunately very evolutionary. But the good thing is there are certain things that we can do to manage this fear a lot better, so that eventually it might not necessarily go away completely, but we can reach a stage where instead of choosing the flight method, which most of us usually go with by not taking on enough stage time, we can choose the fight option and take the stage head on. And here are three very, very practical psychological hacks that we can use to help us manage the stage fright a lot better, so that we can be a lot more confident when we're on stage. I've used these things personally as well, and I'm not that big of a fan of psychological hacks because they can sometimes lack a lot of substance. But these three in particular is something I really want to share because it has genuinely helped me in times where I have felt a lot of stress before going on stage. Let's get into it. The first hack is the priming rule. Priming basically means setting our thoughts and emotions up in such a way that we can be in the state of mind that we want to be in. For instance, if we want to be sad, we can just think of sad and depressing thoughts. And after a few minutes of doing that, we'll automatically be in a sad state because we've primed our minds to be sad. And we can use the same method to be happy as well. Now, there's a lot more that goes into priming. It's not just about changing our thoughts, but about changing our bodies and our stance and everything that can particularly impact our state. But I don't want to get too deep into that. The main point for us to take away is that when we go on stage, we need to prime ourselves, which means think about and keep thinking about the fact that while the real spotlight is on us as the speaker, we are not the main part of this speech. The audience is the hero of the entire presentation. Always and always, it's the audience who we are here for. And we often forget that as speakers. We come on stage and we are always worried, what if I don't look too good? What if I mess up? What if I forget my lines? But if we can shift that mentality and prime ourselves to think about what the audience will want, what can I say or do that will provide maximum value to them, that's when we stop thinking so much about ourselves and we start thinking much more about genuinely adding value to our listeners. And when we do that, or if we see speakers doing that, where they're sincerely just trying to help the audience will forgive things like us not having the best body language or forgetting a line here and there. Because it's not about being a very flamboyant speaker. It's about simply communicating an idea that your listeners will benefit from. That's the essence of public speaking. And that's the first point. Priming our minds, priming ourselves to think about only adding value to the audience and pushing thoughts about our own appearance away as much as possible. Point number 2 is the conversion emotion rule. Now, when we go on stage and we see hundreds of people in front of us, we automatically get nervous. And what do we feel when we get nervous? Our palms might get sweaty. We might feel butterflies in our stomach. We might start sweating and talking very, very quickly. And all those symptoms of nervousness are in fact almost the exact same symptoms of excitement, which means that our bodies don't really know too much of a difference between nervousness and excitement. And this is a very, very crucial point, especially because I know how much it helped me. When I started off speaking on stage, I would visibly be very nervous before the speech would actually happen. And people would come up to me and say, hey, you look very nervous. You're nervous, right? And I would make sure that even if I was feeling nervous, I would tell them, no, I'm not nervous. I'm just excited. And even if in the early stages I was not being completely honest about that, it really did make a difference when I went on stage. I was smiling a lot more, and soon enough, I genuinely started to feel excited before going on stage. And that's what we need to do. Because our bodies don't know the difference between these two emotions, we can use our minds to think more of the positive emotion because the symptoms of both are the same. So before a speech, try telling yourself that if you're feeling nervous, it's not really nervousness, but it's excitement. And it's a small thing that makes a magnificent difference when you do try it over and over again. And the last point is the Brendon Burchard rule. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, but he's one of my favorite speakers, and he has a great theory on fears in general, not just public speaking. That when we fear something, automatically our minds paint the most negative picture of everything that can go wrong. And he says that, okay, it's natural for us to think of the negative outcome, but we should also force ourselves to think about and even make a list, if possible, about the possible gains if we get over our fear, if we were to actually experience and see the positive side of the same situation. So in our case, the worst case scenario of going on stage is that we mess up our lines, we fumble, and we just run away from the stage without completing our presentations. And everyone might laugh at us and think we're losers and not competent enough. But the positive side could be that whatever our idea is, majority of the audience actually takes that away with them, applies it, and benefits in their own lives. And when we think of that and focus on that, it becomes a lot easier to deal with stage fright because we're not only focusing on the negatives, but we're also letting our minds think a little about what can go right if we actually take the leap of speaking on stage. Now, psychological hacks are all well and good, but it's very difficult for us to actually overcome stage fright. So we should aim to manage it a lot better. And these three things will help us do that. But if we have a speech and want to know how we can appear to be less nervous, there are a bunch of other methods that we've gone through in this particular video, which I highly recommend you check out.